So I have a question for you. Did our ancestors carry around these water bottles, sipping on them all day long? The answer is no, yet we tend to have this idea that we need to be sipping water all day long. There's a lot of push to drink often and stay hydrated. I mean, everywhere you go, just, like a restaurant, for example, what's the first thing they ask you? Would you like some water? At social events, everyone's drinking something constantly. We're told that we need to drink 8 glasses of water a day at least because our body is mostly made of water. And no, I'm not telling you not to drink water. We need water, and I'm not against water. I just want to share some unique information that I think is going to help you. The first thing relates to a very interesting research paper that I just stumbled on that has to do with thirst and what thirst actually does for us. It actually triggers a hormone called oxytocin. That's considered the trust and love hormone. In fact, oxytocin is a very powerful stress-reducing hormone. It actually has the ability to lower cortisol, which is very interesting. But the sensation of thirst actually increases oxytocin. And if you never get thirsty because you're drinking all day, you're not going to be able to trigger that oxytocin as much as if you waited until your body gave you signals of thirst. I mean, when you just think about our ancestors, they didn't drink as frequent. They might have drank a good amount of water, right, until they're satisfied, but they drank intermittently. And just as you probably know the importance of eating intermittently, what about drinking water intermittently? I mean, let's just talk a little bit more about this oxytocin for a second. Oxytocin is what people with addictions are seeking when they're addicted to certain things. Whether it's drugs or alcohol, they're trying to get more oxytocin. Oxytocin gives you very good feelings. It helps reduce stress. Maybe you've heard about the oxytocin related to a mother and an infant. When they're bonding, that will increase oxytocin. Also, when you bond with your pets, you can increase oxytocin. They found donating and helping others can increase oxytocin, social interaction, but also there's some other things that can increase this oxytocin, which is, I think, a really important hormone to evaluate and just to understand. So I already told you thirst can do it, but also heat and even sweating increases oxytocin as well. So apparently being overhydrated is not going to really help you with oxytocin. So what I'm talking about is not reducing the quantity of water at all. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about decreasing the frequency of drinking water. I mean, it's just amazing how we drink water on this automatic type mechanism at a social activity. We drink certain beverages for flavor, but we don't really drink for solving this thirst situation. You may want to just try this out. You get up in the morning, ask yourself, am I really thirsty? Before you eat your first meal, maybe it's at lunchtime, are you really thirsty? Do you need to drink something? Because realize drinking a lot of water before a meal could dilute the hydrochloric acid. That could affect your digestion. But again, I'm not against that if you're thirsty. But if you're not thirsty, I'm rarely thirsty until the late afternoon, maybe even going at like 4 or 5 o'clock. So lately I've been doing an experiment with myself just to not drink in the first part of the day and just see what happens. But realize you may find that your stress goes down a bit if you don't drink as often. You should try it out and see. Now, the other thing I want to mention about this is that when you drink a lot of water, okay, you are diluting your sodium, okay? And I've talked about this in other videos. There's a condition called hyponatremia, which you have low sodium. And one reason for that is you're drinking a lot of water, and that can flush out the electrolytes, making you feel tired, weak, fatigued. You see, one of the things that you need to know about sodium is if you're sodium deficient because you drank a lot of water, that can stress out the sympathetic nervous system. It can actually elevate adrenaline and decrease your parasympathetics, which is interesting. So waiting before you get thirsty to drink water and also having enough sodium can actually help your stress. Realize that the more the adrenals are activated, the more sodium you're going to need And when your adrenals are exhausted, you start to lose aldosterone. And that's another hormone that helps you retain salt. And so you're going to need more salt. Of course, we don't want you to get the salt from the chips and the salty snacks. Just add more sea salt to your meal. And also realize that it's the salt that helps hydrate you, not just the water. You need a combination of both. With too much water and not enough salt, that equals dehydration. And I'm talking about the intercellular dehydration. So salt is so important. Also, when you're low in salt, you can actually be at risk for insulin resistance, leg cramps, and even abdominal pain. So I would not just pay attention to thirst as a sensation, but also to your cravings to salt. Don't ignore those. And if you're concerned about having too much salt because of your blood pressure, just increase your potassium. But I will say, I'm not against drinking water, okay? Just don't drink it so frequent, okay? When you drink it, you might want to just consider waiting until you're thirsty and then getting most of your water when you're thirsty. I mean, we do lose water just from breathing. You lose between 10 to 20 milliliters of water every hour. Not exercise or anything, just at rest. When you're breathing for an hour, you're losing some water. That's between 240 and 480 milliliters, which is between a quarter or a half of a liter of fluid just by breathing. Now, when you add exercise to that, you increase that by about 4x, depending on how much exercise you do. But you do lose water when you're breathing, when you're sweating, when you're urinating, when you have diarrhea, when you have vomiting. But there's one more additional thing that you probably have never considered or realized. When the humidity is low, not high, but low, as in the wintertime, that low humidity will draw out fluid from our body. The air extracts water from our body, which is interesting. You would think that the high humidity will force you to lose water, but no, it's the low humidity in the winter. So just because it's cold out, don't think that you don't need water. The other point I want to bring up about drinking a lot of water is that the plastic containers. On average, in 1 year, a person consumes 16,000 microplastic particles from drinking water in these plastic containers. Every time you twist the plastic cap on that plastic bottle, you release like 500 microplastic particles. And as the temperature goes up and goes down, that degrades the plastic as well. And in one study, I found 93% of all plastic bottles that were tested contained microplastics. Not all of them, but the great majority. Now, because of the censoring and the suppressing of the algorithms on YouTube, it's becoming more difficult to find my content. And there's a lot of content that I cannot put on YouTube, unfortunately. So to make sure you have full access of all my information, go to drberg.com and subscribe to my newsletter by clicking the link down below in the description. I will see you on the other side.